very excited to hear some of their thoughts, but I do have a few housekeeping tips. Microsoft Teams does accommodate more videos at this point, so there will be up to 9 participants' screens will be shared. So please turn your video off to avoid sharing your video with the group. If you want to go ahead and pop in and wave, you're more than welcome to, but if you feel like it's time for your lunch break, please turn your video off. Due to the number of participants today, we've automatically muted everyone to eliminate interferences. Please enter any questions or comments into the chat box. If you have something to add to the conversation, please note it in the chat box and we will call on you. You may also send questions through email to professional@asce.org, and then we will share those in the chat box. So we really encourage questions. We've got a great team of panelists. They've got great things to share, so please share as many questions as you can and take advantage of their expertise. Please close all of your applications, especially email, so that your system will run smoothly. And then please keep all conversations geared towards the benefit of the community and today's topic. So we will begin today's roundtable with introductions from our panelists. Then each panelist will share their perspective and insights on the topics of shifting interview practices for a virtual setting. So I'll go ahead and start with Hala. Hala, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? Oh, you're on mute. So you know that's going to happen probably at least one more time, right?
Yeah, no problem. My name is Hala Abdu. I'm a drainage and road engineer in training at FAM Construction on the I-66 outside the Beltway project. I'm a fresh grad. I graduated in 2019 from University of Jordan, where I was a board member with the American Society student chapter, and now I'm mentoring the chapter overseas. I currently moved to Virginia, and I'm a member of the National Capital Section. After passing my FE and graduation, I was really excited, but COVID-19 broke out, and I had to deal with the new normal. I have had several interviews that were online. I had them on the phone. I had them on Zoom, on Teams. So I did have a couple of experiences. So I would love to share this with other people, and I hope they enjoy today's roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to hear your personal experience and kind of pick your brain on the things that you've learned during the pandemic. So Tony, I'll go ahead and turn to you next. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Punton. I am sitting here in lovely, sunny Concord, New Hampshire now. I am the token old person that is found out on this panel discussion. So I'd like to thank you for roping me in that way. I work for an engineering consulting company. I'm a project manager. Most of my technical background has been in roadway transportation planning. I'm also a part-time professor at the University of New Hampshire, where I work for the civil, environmental, and the mechanical departments, where I am the coordinator of the capstone program. So as you can imagine, beginning mid-March of this year, I've been virtual from a educational perspective, and also from a company perspective. Here in New Hampshire, we have not been as hard hit by the pandemic as many parts of the country and the world. So, but we still, as I think Hala mentioned, the new norm, and we're getting used to the new norm of this. So we got some tips and some techniques, and hopefully, and a little bit of personal experience in our Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams, all the different technical aspects of it. So I look forward to the questions, look forward to offering some insight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to hear your perspectives as well. Kaval, can you go ahead and introduce yourself next?
Yes, definitely. So hi everyone, my name is Keval Satra. I am a project engineer with HR Green. I graduated from Texas A&M University, and ever since I graduated, I've been working for my firm HR Green. I mostly help municipal clients plan, design, and construct their water and wastewater infrastructure. Outside of work, I've been very involved with both ASCE and the Water Environment Federation of Texas. I have been in several leadership roles, one of which that aligns well with today's discussion is mentoring. So I have been the Texas A&M graduate student mentors for last 5 years. And this year, so I have been doing this for a while, and I've realized while and I'm addressing the students specifically over here, they did struggle to get interviews, especially people who are immigrants over here. So I had started researching, and I've been doing this for a while. I want to say like 6 months or so on, and then COVID hit. So my research, some of it had tweaked. So I'm sitting here, and I'm hoping that I can contribute to the conversation and give the feedback and share the tips and tricks that I have learned during my research.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'll go ahead and start with our kickoff question next. So what is the best advice you have for making a strong first impression in a virtual environment? Hala, I'll go ahead and turn to you. What are some of your thoughts on the best advice for making a strong virtual first impression? You are on mute again.
Don't do this to me. Okay. Well, the thing that I would say that start with the simple techniques that we usually attend earlier to an interview. So in our case, you have to come early in order to make sure that all your technologies is working, and in this way you will know that in case of any difficulties, you will be able to introduce them before you have any difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. You always got to start with your best foot forward. Tony, I'll turn to you next. What is your best piece of advice?
Well, I mean, obviously a virtual interview is different from a face-to-face interview as far as the physical contact. But I think that and Hala hit on one of the first points is from a technology point of view, especially if you're overseas, you're on slow bandwidth. Just make sure everything is up and running. But I would say it's the same thing as any interview. I'm trying to make sure I know where the camera is, and I'm not looking at my picture in the bottom right-hand side, and I'm looking at this unfortunate, little dot in the middle to keep eye contact. I think appearance also matters. I see, Hala and Kaval. I'm looking at them, and they have, a nice, neat room. I mean, as I look now, my ceiling fan back here may be a little distracting. If I move, I might be able to cover it. But also, just be aware of yourself. Dress properly. Whether this is a kind of a casual. So me and Kaval got the nice polo shirt on, and Hala looks fantastic. So it's also that appearance that you have, and I think there's not much from a virtual, besides, of course, the technology, that's different than a face-to-face interview.
Absolutely. I mean, that's great advice. I mean, you kind of got to take the same principles that you have for a normal interview and move them virtually, right? Like appearance is very important. Kaval, can you go ahead and share some of your best advice?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that Tony did point out, and I'll just go and even Hala touched upon it, check the technology. One of the nitty-gritty details that I've figured most people don't do is restart their laptop. They should restart the laptop or whatever device that they're using a day before their interview, so that all the updates are installed, and it does not happen while you are in the interview and all of a sudden Windows is starting to download updates, and it just look really bad. So do that small piece when it comes to technology. One thing that I was thinking about first impression. So I was thinking about how the change would occur when can you guys still hear me?
We can still hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my screen froze. So sorry about that. So one of the things that I was thinking about, before COVID and after COVID, first impressions typically depend on your dress up. In which in the virtual setting, it is how you're dressing up, your background. Then in the first, minute or so, people are gauging your body language, the way you talk. So you want to be slow, and also you want to be loud. You want to have these hand gestures showing that you are engaged. And one of the things that Tony did point out is look at the camera and not on the corners of your laptop, because uh, that is kind of the new normal of the eye contact. Um, your state of mind is really important. So one of the things that I have practiced, and it works for me personally, is having a state of mind where you are envisioning that you have already conquered what you wanted to achieve. So for example, when you are in an interview, just already start envisioning that you did a great job in the interview and you already have an offer. That will create an immense amount of confidence in you, and that shows up in your body language, it will show up in your words. So that's one piece of advice, is just think that you already have the offer. And I think that will create a lot of positivity in you, and you'll do better in your interviews.
Yeah, that's some great advice. So we do have a few questions in the chat box, so I'll go ahead and start with the first one. For those who have been on the side of interviewing prospective hires, what are some things that have stood out positively during a virtual interview about an interviewee? Tony, is this something that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the checklist that I think the three of us have just talked about. I've noticed that a level of confidence, a level of composure, the same way if you were sitting across the table from him or her and you shook their hand and it was a nice firm handshake, it's a positive, the eye contact, there's nothing wrong with, and I do see, I saw Kevel, and I don't know about Hala, but looking to the side, I assume they're taking notes or making notes to themselves. So that also shows the interaction. And I'll be honest with you, even if you're really not taking notes, if you do that and you give the appearance, so don't tell anybody that. But so no, I mean, as far as tips go, I mean, one of the questions, and I'm jumping, but one of the questions that was, what tips do you have for landing a virtual interview? Besides the technology, I don't know. I can't think of a significant difference between what I would be looking for, and I hope prospective employees will be looking for, from a candidate that's sitting on the opposite side of a camera or the opposite side of a table. That's just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, that's great advice. Kaval, do you have anything to add?
I guess I'm in agreement with most of the things Tony said. With regards to hiring a candidate, most of the skill requirements are still the same. It's just the setup now is virtual, so I don't think anything is different. But if you want me to elaborate on some skills that now we are looking for in people specifically because of this work from home thing, is soft skills, especially communication. We expect people to be more communicative. I have seen in the past 3 months, our company has switched to virtual setting, and we are more communicative. There's over communication going on in the task. As soon as you send an email, people acknowledge the email, and there's more description written on the email. So I think communication is a very important skill. And one of the other soft skills is, especially for younger engineers who are doing tasks for the first time. We work in an industry where unfortunately time is money, and every hour that you charge on in the consulting side has to be billed, and you have to worry about variance and utilization rates and all that kind of stuff. So when you're doing a task and if you're stuck, don't don't ponder a lot on how it is supposed to be done. Knowing exactly when to seek help is an important quality that I personally look at when I'm trying to work with younger engineers.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, there are certain things that the virtual environment, those soft skills are even more important within this environment. So those are great points. So I'll move to the next question in the chat box. Could you share with me some of the ethics etiquette for handling interviews? What backgrounds to use in your videos, the grooming for the interviewee, postures? So Tony, you've kind of talked about that a little bit. Hala, do you have any advice from the past interviews that you've done?
I would say pick a place that you will not have any voices going in the background because you may have difficulties. Um, Make sure that to tell the people in your house that I'm having an interview. I don't want to see your face. Some kind of this let them be aware of the situation that you are having an interview. And some of my family, when they see me dressing up and getting ready, they're like, where are you going? We're staying home. And no, you have to keep the same etiquettes. You have to dress well. You have to make sure that you have no outside voices. And Tony talked about the background, and for me, I used to have like changed the place of my desk in order to have the wall behind me, so I would not have anything that distract me. Then I discovered those backgrounds. You can just easily put them, and you can go ahead and have your interview. I would say go ahead with the desktop video call, not on the phone, because I don't know why, but I feel it gives more image of professionality.
I'd like to say, as far as background goes, if you're talking also the virtual background, we were going around before the meeting started. If you have a vacation picture, I mean, not one of the pre-canned ones, but if you have a vacation picture or something that's very subtle, a beach. I mean, I was trying to call up I went to Italy last year, and I've got a great picture of a sunset in Cinque Terre. If you do that, sometime that's a conversation, because I think that Teresa's background is probably not somewhere she's been. That might be a little bit of a canned. But if I know somebody who has we were at an interview, and this wasn't a virtual interview, but his screensaver was a golf course that he had played on over in Ireland or something like that. And it so happens that the DPW director we were interviewing with was a big golfer, and that started the conversation. So whether it's it can be any, I would say, except for something that's distracting. I would say that the background you have could be, and I did turn off my ceiling fan right there, but it could be good. I do have a background story. We as a company interviewed for a project, and one of the junior engineers from the city they were interviewing, we were in her basement, and right behind her on the wall mounted was a battle axe, like an axe, like a medieval battle axe, and it was just behind her, and it was kind of funny because I talked to everybody afterwards. I go, did you see the axe in the background? It was just be aware that they can see what's going on back there.
Yeah, that's funny that you point that out. I mean, you could use it in your favor, like you're saying, that it's a conversation piece. And a lot of times people hire people that they get along with or that they have something in common with. So, I mean, that's, use it to your advantage. Kaval, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I was thinking about first impressions, and it aligns well with this piece is research about the company, research about the people who are interviewing you. So, for example, if you are interviewing for a position in San Francisco, maybe use Golden Gate as a picture background and start a small talk around that topic so that you and the other person are just easing the nerves, and it's more hospitable and a friendly environment. I think most of the other things they covered.
Yeah, that's great advice. So I have my background is an ASCE Future World Vision background that's very fancy, and I put the link to it in the chat box if anyone wants to use it. But there's other ASC backgrounds too. I will move on to the next question. So, how did COVID-19 change companies' priorities in terms of current and future employment? Kaval, is that something do you want to share a little bit about, your experience within the student chapter that you're working with, kind of some of the things you're hearing?
Yeah, sure. So I want to say there has been phases. So as soon as COVID hit in February, most companies went on the hiring freeze just because of all the uncertainty and not knowing where we are going as an industry. Uh, but how I see the AEC industry, especially people who have more clients in the public works, things have been more or less same. And I was just reading a fact that there have been more residential home sales in May than last year. Don't quote me on that, but all of these are good news. However, one thing that is something that does worry me is the taxes have dried up a little bit for counties and cities. And while it may not impact us as an industry right away, there might be some impact in 2021. So I would say that things have opened up. It's not as bad as things were in February or March, but things have opened up, but there's still a caution. So one advice that I have for all the job seekers is, now you want to be the best candidate out there. You cannot just be doing the normal and average things to get a job. Just make sure that you're going above and beyond and making this as a priority. I'm pretty sure we'll touch upon one of the questions later on how to land interviews, and I'll add more context to it. So I'll say the things are not as good as they were before COVID, where the economy was doing just really great. So that's how I look at the industry right now.
I would love to add something. I would be adding to something that Kival said. Considering the interviews online, what we can say when we follow up with after applying for the application, we can mention that, hi, I'm available if you want to have a remote or a virtual interview. It's good to put that in front of them, so they would know that you are flexible, and that will give you maybe more priority, that they want someone who is flexible of being remotely, and even saying that you are okay with starting remotely. This could also be some part of the discussion that you can start. This have not been here before, but now it could be.
And I would say it's great that a candidate, I'd say from the employer perspective, it's great that a candidate will offer that he or she would be willing to start virtual. I think, though, it's very difficult to onboard somebody, and the first introduction that they have to the company is they've never been to the office. I mean, there's still, people previous to this pandemic have been telecommuting, and what it takes in some smaller companies is you winning the trust of your immediate supervisor. Yes, I can be at home. Yes, I can take 10 minutes and walk the dog, but I'm still going to get all my work done. Without even establishing yourself in the company or having a working knowledge or knowing who your boss is or who your cubicle mate is, it's very difficult to bring somebody on board without actually meeting them, without having them sign the papers for human HR, for getting used to the culture of the office. So, I think eventually it'll work it works to your advantage if you've been established in a company. But to go to a company and go virtual without establishing yourself and your relationship with your bosses, that's difficult. That's what we found is a difficult part. And I think Keval is right that we haven't seen too much of a slowdown in design work. I'm mostly in public infrastructure, private infrastructure. There was one company that does a lot of private work that made offers, I think, to 5 or 6 UNH students. And I think they only actually went through with 1 or 2 hires. Because trying to onboard 5 new people, we bring you on and you then go away. Basically, it was difficult. So I think everybody's getting used to it, but the onboarding of people virtually is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a huge challenge, right? Like, I'm going to actually make a note right here that might be a good future topic for Thursday at 3. If everyone can see my note taking over here. But yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, have you noticed, Tony, and I know you're pretty well connected within the ASCE world. I mean, you're noticing that firms are still hiring people, right?
I do. I can't say firsthand. I know that our company has advertisements out, maybe not as much. I still I have a setting for Indeed, Indeed job, and I'm not specifically looking for a job, but I want to know what the industry is. I used to see, as Keval said, and Hala mentioned, I saw 20 or 30 postings every day within the Boston area for civil, and it's gone down quite a bit, but it's still out there. Maybe they're residual. We as an office, our company in Massachusetts just went to 25% occupancy. I'm in New Hampshire, and there's been no restrictions on occupancy in New Hampshire. We only have 3 people in the office, so it's not a big deal. We have very low rates, and so it's just a total different than in a really tight community like Boston or the greater Boston area. But we just went to 25% capacity. So I think now that people may be feeling more comfortable that at least if we bring somebody on 2 or 3 days a week, he or she will be in the office, even if they've, so that they get some type of, human interaction. But I think, though, that this kind of proves, unfortunately, that we don't have to go to the office as much as we have been. And I think one of the bigger ramifications is going to be commercial real estate. There's going to be a lot of offices that are open, office space that's open. And one of the detriments, though, is that, you miss the face-to-face handshaking, hugging. Be honest with you, hey, you're my buddy. I'm a little bit leery of people, the younger generation, being shy about interaction, physical interaction, and but it's the reality now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ramifications. I'll move on to the next question on that happy note. How much is changing about number and length of interviews for companies? So I know, Tony, you kind of just talked about that as far as opportunities. Has anyone have any thoughts about length of interviews as far as what's appropriate? Hala, what has your experience been? Is it usually an hour, a half hour, 15 minutes? What's virtually kind of how do you feel like that's gone?
Well, it really depends on who is interviewing you. If you're being interviewed by, let's say, a project manager or by someone in the company who are in a phase for getting you with an HR, it will get longer because they want to know more about you. And so it will be like an hour and less. But like video calling interviews or like with just last people who are making the decision kind of could be really short. Not really, but can be short. Maybe because they just want to know specific stuff and they just have all the checks done. So it really depends on who is really. It could be like from half an hour to an hour, I would say. And it depends from being a phone call or a video call. Video call will be much shorter than the phone, of course.
Awesome. Kaval, go ahead, Tony. Were you going to chime in?
Yeah, I was going to say the overall interview itself may be shorter because typically when you have an interview, you go to somebody's office, you wait there. Would you like a cup of coffee? They walk you to the kitchen, you get a cup of coffee, and then after, hey, let me introduce you to some people. So that type of pre and post interview that's really not interviews, but is the interaction that a lot of people gauge, especially the hirers, they gauge their interaction. That's going to go away. I think you might find, though, sense that this type of video interaction even can happen anywhere, that there may be more interviews because to really interview somebody, the professionals or in the upper level have to take an hour, 2 hours out of their day. Whereas this, it could be truly just a half an hour and they don't have to leave their kitchen. So you may find more of a frequency, or people may be more open to quicker interviews or more frequent interviews. That's just what I think.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. Kaval, what have you?
Yes, so I would like to add a couple of things. The length and the number of interviews. So when I say number of interviews, it's round one, HR, HR interview, and then the team interview. It all depends on what kind of position you're applying for. I think the younger positions would typically have fewer rounds, but as you go up, in the project manager and all that kind of heavy roles, you might have to interact with more number of people. And like Tony pointed out, it may not be feasible for getting all the people at one time, and they may have more rounds but shorter time frame where you're speaking with different peoples in a 30-minute interval or a 1 hour interval. Typically for younger folks, I've seen that the time slot is about 1 hour. One other thing that Tony brought about, and our company does that, is you typically get someone into the office. There's like a getting to know each other, 5-10 minutes small talk, then there's a formal interview, and then we typically take the candidate to lunch so that you can see if you can really work with that candidate. It's not just about technical skills and soft skills, but you also want to so our company is big on culture, and we really want people to feel like it's a family working towards a common goal. So that is really important, and that component is going to be missing now. And that was an HR question that I asked, and unfortunately I didn't get a response yet from my HR on what they're doing right now. So that's one thing that as a candidate, if I was interviewing, I would try to gauge some company culture, especially, onboarding is difficult. So you don't really know what the company culture is, and you don't want to join a firm just to join it. You want to be like me, someone who has done his research, joined the company, and stays with the company, because that's really good for your overall career. You don't want to be a jumper, 3 years working at X company, 3 years working at a Y company.
I would say something regarding being onboarding. I onboarded. I was online. I just started for the first week getting my IT things done, and after it, I was working from home. So regarding that, I would say go ahead and take it to LinkedIn. I did try that, and it really worked. That I try to approach people who are from not specifically be in my team, but it could be in other teams in the company. It's good to have them with you and to keep an eye on the company itself. LinkedIn. I would suggest you said Kival talked about the research. I would say also go ahead and open the Google Maps and see your company office from far away. So you would feel somehow that you're taking part, you're actually part of this place. You can also check the accounts for the employees there, and you can start a conversation. Hi, I'm new to the company. It's good in order to you have some kind of interaction. It's not 100%, and sometimes it can be hard to, even in the office, if you can see everyone, you can't actually get interaction with everyone. So it will have some kind of fear that I'm new here. But when you are approaching them by LinkedIn, I feel that it's giving you more space in order to talk one-to-one conversations, even though we don't have the usual kitchen talks. But but I would say that, yeah, go ahead and take it to social media. Be part of your company. For me, I like to share what the company is posting on updates of our project. That makes me feel that I'm part of the project. Another thing for how to get to know people in the company, what other people in the companies can do, that they can have a meeting, a team meeting call for, let's say, the whole office. That's what we did in our company, and it was really interesting that everyone from senior to even engineering training, they would introduce themselves and what actually they do in the office. So this way you will have at least names attached to photos, to faces. And I took it to LinkedIn because I used to email a lot of people, but I don't know how they look like. So at least I want to feel more approachable when I talk to them. So I take it to LinkedIn or to social media. And LinkedIn is a great opportunity for you to talk with people, because it is still a professional platform. Don't want to take it to Facebook, believe me. So it's it's a good way to start being onboarding, and go ahead and take the chance. Even if you're onboarding on virtually, it's still the same, somehow the same steps that you're gonna take. You're gonna meet the people who are gonna be responsible for you, the mentors. Have someone that will have one-to-one connection, someone that you have to go to questions always for to. And just a hand, don't ask every once in a while. Try to pick all your questions for once and go for them. So this way it won't be aggressive for them, because you want both of you to have the same flexibility in doing the work.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, building on what Hala said, getting to know your coworkers. We have had, as a company, we have about 180 people in our company, and we had a big, they call it all hands on deck or all team meeting, where some of the senior managers were talking about the next step for the COVID, introducing, and you could ask questions in the chat box or anonymously, and that was fine. But aside from that, we have, an office with the traffic group. So there's 5 or 6 people that meet. And typically every manager of every group will have a weekly meeting, Monday morning check-in, Friday afternoon check-in. And that happens in person if you're all in the office, but now it can happen virtually. And it's kind of the same thing. What do you got on board for next week? I mean, well, you hope that your bosses, adapt to this. What do we have on board for next week? What are you working on? What are opportunities that are coming up in the company? So you could have the big picture, all hands, and then the smaller picture of, hey, here's my group. And one of the things I'd like to say is that once you become on board and you're working, and especially if you've been working for somebody and you've established a relationship, as I would hope that if I gave a assignment to a junior engineer and they had questions, they'd come to me, point to the plans and say, I don't understand this or the quantities or something like that. You're going to have to be very adept. And one of the questions is, what technical skill do you need? I think that you as younger generation are probably very much attuned to sitting in front of it and talking, but the share screen and the PDF editor and something like that is going to be very important, because you're going to call your boss. And I know I just have a laptop now, but I've got a bigger monitor that you plug in. Everybody's got 6 or 7 monitors right now. So you get pretty adept at sharing your screen. And like Hala says, be focused. Tell your boss, I have this cross section. I don't understand this, circle it on the screen, and then go back and forth. So be prepared with questions like you would hand somebody a piece of paper. I don't know what to do. Share your screen like, I don't know what to do, or is this correct?
Yeah.
Another thing, when you're not screen sharing, open your video. I know it sometimes. You will, okay, I will just be on, I will just shut my video and just open the mic. But it's really, it's better to open your video, especially if you're new in the company, and this will give you more interaction because you're lacking it. And especially that it's not like you're a senior engineer who have too many meetings. It would be just like 1 meeting, 2 meetings a week. So you won't have that much of meetings that you have in mind. So it is better to open your video and interact with the people in front of you. On the screen, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another, there are a plethora of questions in the chat box, and I'll try to get to all of them. So let me go ahead and move to the next one. We've kind of discussed this. Moving into the future, do you think companies will opt to do virtual interviews in place of in-person interviews? And Tony, you kind of chatted to this a little bit, especially for candidates who are not local. Do you think there is still value in interviewing someone in person, even if there is a virtual interview first? So, Tony, you've kind of already expressed some views. Did you have anything to add?
Well, I think that you might have, especially if for example, a student applies, they're going to school in California, they live in New Hampshire. Oh, I saw an opening in New Hampshire. Oh, do I have to come back over Christmas break and interview? It could be a real quick, and phone interviews have been happening quite a bit, obviously, but I think the virtual aspect of it. So I think you might find a lot of pre-screening, if you will, virtual. I still personally, and again, it's my, not my fear, but my biggest thought and biggest detriment to the whole pandemic is nobody's going to shake hands. Nobody wants to be in the same room with anybody else for fear, rightly so now. And so I do think of face-to-face, because you can't shake anybody's hand virtually. Although you're right, and Hala is 100% right, especially if you're interviewing. Never mind if you're on board already, leave your camera on. It shows you're paying attention. That's good. So I think that I never think anything will take the place of face-to-face, but I think that virtual is going to take the place of teleconferences, because now you can see people, see if they're really paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll move on to the next question. What technical skills should we expect? What technical questions should we expect? be asked. Kaval, do you have any thoughts about what technical questions an interviewee should expect?
Sure. So again, it depends on where you are in the career path. If you are a younger engineer, um, I've seen generally the rule of thumb is that it takes a civil engineer at least 3 years to really understand what is out there in the industry versus the academia where they learn the foundation and the core skills. Most likely, I've seen in the interviews, people just ask you technical things based off what they have on their resume. So it's not something that is outside the box, and they're not going to ask you things like tell me the Manning's equation. They're basically going to ask you that, hey, I see that you have done a design project on wastewater treatment plant. Can you explain me what was your role? What did you do? So most of the technical questions are stuff based on your resume. And then when it comes to skills, most civil engineering subfields do require you to know some kind of software. It may be ArcGIS or BioWin or HECRAS and whatever that is. They may ask you a few things about your level of proficiency in these apps. So if you know more, that means less onboarding and training time for them to get you up to speed. Again, keep in mind if you're going to work for a consulting firm, time is money. So if you are taking less training time, that's more beneficial to the company and you're bringing in more value. So if you are preparing for a job interview, focus on the job description and then focus on your resume. I don't think you need anything outside of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hala, did you have anything to add?
I kind of agree with Kival, and I want to add something. Um, even if you're not aware of your capabilities, just go ahead and tell them that you are willing to learn. It's really important, even if you're not feeling 100% good at something. You can just say, "I'm willing to learn, and I'm hoping to give it my best." And you never know. Sometimes not all companies are looking for someone who have it all. Sometimes they just want someone who is new and just sponge, ready to learn and go ahead and give it their best.
Yeah.
One thing on the technical side, again, we're talking about technical skills that aren't a virtual interview or a regular interview. We're just talking technical skills that you need as an individual. And as Kaval said, be prepared to talk, whether it's HECRAS is perfect, ArcGIS, HydroCAD. If you are going to say that you're proficient or know it, easily expect a question from a senior engineer that says, okay, you know HECRAS, can you describe a subcatchment and how that operates and how you would find out the area of a subcatchment? So if you're going to, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying, don't oversell yourself unless you really are, because a lot of times the senior engineers who are interviewing you, they're not going to do all the talking, but they're going to be your boss and they'll ask you a technical question. So if you have a technical background, it's fantastic. Err a little bit on the side of being conservative of how proficient you are, because you could, or be prepared to be quizzed. And I think that that's something we've interviewed some lower level, some junior level staff, and they talk about their CAD proficiency, and we walk around, you put them behind a CAD. How would you draw this line and copy and paste, and you get kind of a little bit of a feel for that. So that can happen now virtually, but just be prepared to back up or reinforce whatever you say as far as your technical skill goes. And I don't think there's any, everybody puts down that they're proficient in Microsoft Office and Word and Excel, and that's fine. I don't know now if there's anything. I'm really good at Zoom meetings. But just by you demonstrating and not like I just did, my computer wasn't plugged in and I had to plug it in. But by demonstrating that type of technical proficiency, if you will, they'll know that you can run or participate in a virtual meeting.
Yeah, I mean that's.
Add one more thing over here.
Yep, go ahead.
So Tony brought up a really good point, and this was one of the things that I had researched why younger folks do not really get a job easily. is because one, they're not directed towards one kind of a job. They are doing the civil engineering program and they're trying to get a geotech job, a structural engineer job, and you are everywhere. Second thing is just to get their resume selected through the ATS system, they'll put in all the keywords without really knowing the skill. And I think lying is never a good idea. You if you lie once, you'll have to tell other lies. So do not just for the heck of getting your resume selected, put stuff on your resume that's not true. It's a big red flag, and you don't want to create that impression for you or anyone around you. A second thing, and it's kind of a tip that I have, to use LinkedIn to showcase your skill. So I kind of think of this like a portfolio. So if you say that let's say AutoCAD or ArcGIS, do a project, spend a weekend, do something on AutoCAD, it on LinkedIn, which shows that you have done and you have created that product, and this is your proficiency. Put in a Word document describing what did you use, what were your assumptions, and how you got there. That shows that you're not just putting it on the resume. And I got this idea from graphic designers. They typically have a portfolio of the work that they have done, and I don't see why it's not a translatable skill in our civil engineering, where we use softwares and you're supposed to know design work. And you have to do these things in this COVID market. This is one of the push that I'm doing for the people who reach out to me, so that you're able to stand out. And it's supply and demand. The supply is low for the job, so you have to be really good, and that will increase the chances of you getting a job or that interview.
Yeah, that's some great advice. So, there is a question about the construction industry in the chat, and I put a link. We've kind of covered that topic previously on another Thursdays at 3. So I put the link to that recording in the chat to check that out. There's a lot of really good information about the pandemic and what that means to the construction industry in the future. So I recommend watching that video. The next question we have, Tony, you're being challenged with your onboarding thoughts. So Anthony,
I'm sorry that's not allowed, and I didn't hear you.
Not allowed. There's some questioning in the ranks. So here we go. Anthony, have you / your company actually tried onboarding someone remotely, or is this a perception that it would be difficult because this is the way we've always done it? So.
Oh no, I mean, me personally, my office that I work in, that I manage, we have 3 people. We're not ready to expand yet. I do know that there have been some interviews, some virtual interviews, because now our corporate headquarters is in Rhode Island. We have Massachusetts offices. Those are going to the 25% capacity, is that they are bringing individuals on board now because they are going to get some part-time face-to-face. I didn't ask anybody specifically, but I can tell you my feeling and the general impression that I got is that if somebody's interned with you, you have a knowledge. Because remember, if you're bringing them on board, you then have to buy them a computer and 2 monitors and put it in their house, or they put it in their house. Now, everybody else, when the crap hit the fan and everybody cleared out of their office, right? I don't know about ASCE, but you don't have a computer or a monitor there anymore because you took it home. So you got to think of that. You have somebody who you don't know, and you're giving them thousands of dollars worth of computer equipment. And you also have, now remember, time is money. Kevin, you said it a million times. Your overhead, if you come on board, the company it costs the company $80 to $90 an hour just for you to sit there. And if you don't bill it to somebody, if you don't charge it, then the company pays you. So the more efficient you can fill out your HR forms, do your direct deposit, your tax things, which typically happen in an office, that's better. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I would think that a minimal amount of interaction, and also your boss, he or she doesn't have the opportunity to walk in the cubicle and say, hey, Hala, are you progressing on this? Because you could be spinning your tires and they don't know because they're 50 miles away, and until you come to them and they don't come to you physically. So it can happen, but I would say that I believe most companies would like to have at least a little interaction before they said, hey, I've never shaken your hand before. Here's $3,000 worth of computer stuff. We're gonna pay you $60,000 a year to sit at your house, and I have no idea if your home environment is conducive to that, If you are an independent person, you haven't proven yourself yet to me that you work independently. And if I call you up and you don't answer the phone, how do I know you're not out, taking a walk rather than doing your work, or, building your deck? Because that's what drives me crazy. As I have so much stuff to do, but I paid my dues, if you will. So they trust me.
So no, I mean, you make some
I would
excellent
love to add
points.
to that.
Go ahead.
As being someone who's starting remotely, I would say if you're supervising someone who is on virtual platforms, you can go ahead and ask them what's working on this assignment or on this assignment. And another thing that for me as myself, I do, even if sometimes I feel that I don't have any questions, but I keep updating the person who is working with me. Like, hey, I reviewed this, I did this, I sent the email. And this way you indirectly know that this one or this person is progressing in the work day by day. Another thing that in your weekly meeting, you will, of course, ask them, what did you do? So if they haven't done anything, so that explains that they haven't been doing their work. So maybe it's some way I did read a post about that they say we have to care more about the actions than the time spent in doing the actions. So if someone is submitting the review that they asked you for, that means that they have been working. If they didn't, it's somehow either they have a difficulty, and for these difficulties they have to talk to you, and or they have been sleeping, or they have been just walking the dog, which could have happened. So you actually know by what's the progressing that someone is happening, even if it's not face to face. If they don't come to your cubicle and tell you what happens with that, well, we have Teams, we have emails, we have the phone, we have everything that you can approach them with.
Yeah, I mean, Tony and Hala, you both make some great points. Both the cost of equipment, trusting someone with it is, like Tony said, that's a lot of trust. But Hala, you're right.
You can let them sign.
Let them sign. I mean, that's true too. But anyway, so the person who asked that question followed up. My company has been largely remote and partly remote for everyone for 5 to 10 years. So I mean, I think there are definitely going to be more and more companies moving to remote. There's also a question in the chat box: is it possible for overseas people to work remotely? And I think there's a great answer in the chat box, so I won't share that with the panel, because I think that is a very comprehensive answer there. I think we have time for one more question. So on top of that, just a thought seed for the conversation, since there's been a lot of inherent blending between virtual interview and remote work, the Teams see more button tends to always get me. I'll go ahead and read this. So I have been looking for largely remote work for a while now due to my desire to be where I am and in the mountains, far from any major city. Civil engineering is a conservative field in many ways, and even 4 months ago into COVID, I'm hearing a lot of companies that want a person in the office because that's the way they've always done it. I see most of this. What I hear a lot is we have a collaborative work environment. What this amounts to is that this company hasn't figured out how to smoothly collaborate without being face-to-face. As Hala mentioned, there's so many different tools that we can do to do that. So it's harder for extroverts not to have face-to-face interaction, but easier for introverts. Not all civil engineers are extroverts, and I don't remember now if it was on this call that I shared that or if I shared that on a previous call today, because all these calls are blending together. But I think it is a lot easier for introverts within this virtual environment to a certain extent.
Get one.
I'm sorry?
It was our meeting for today.
It was the previous meeting that we had, Hala. I'm sorry.
Well, you guys, we've all heard about the extrovert engineer. He's the one who looks at your shoes when he's talking to you.
Oh, so anyways.
So I mean, I'd like to speak to that. I mean,
Okay.
I agree. I don't think that people are hesitant, and I'll say, and again, I'll represent the semi-older generation, especially on this call. I don't think people are hesitant to know that work can get done remotely, and the technology is there. And again, a couple $1,000s worth of equipment, it's nothing as compared to the tens of thousands, literally tens of thousands that it takes to bring somebody on board for 6 months worth of overhead, insurance, and stuff like that. I do think it's the level of trust, and it's the trust for anything, to not know anybody. And I had an old time senior engineer told us one time, you got to put a lot of deposits in somebody's emotional bank account. And once you do that, you gain their trust. So, if you are able to present yourself well, you have a great interview, you get a level of trust. But you'd be surprised, just working on one project, and if that person's at the office at 11 o'clock at night with you trying to get that out, the deposit you put in the emotional bank account will then really allow for, I know that she can do it, she'll do it remotely, and I trust her. And as Hala said, I'll give you credit, and I take it back. It's the product. It's the performance specification. Do you perform? Did you get the job done? I don't care if it was on Saturday or Sunday or Friday at midnight. And if you want to walk the dog or take a swim in the middle of the afternoon, I don't care. But it's just getting to that level of trust with an individual. And that's what it is. And it's with anything. It's with any relationship, you have to start with trust.
I would love to add something. Regarding someone asked about working remotely overseas, it really can depend also on the company. Like, how big is your company? Do they work overseas? Do they have overseas projects? If yes, my manager is in Spain, my team leader is in Spain, and I'm working here from Virginia. So it really depends on how big your company, and sometimes when someone is moving between projects, this can happen, and maybe we will be able to see him face to face. But for the meanwhile, many companies are do working this overseas, working especially for people who are already with their teams, but already with the company, but are moving from project to project. So this is flexible for them also to work overseas.
I have an ASCE friend, and some people might know him. His name is Shane Bender, and we sit on a committee together. He's in Taiwan, working in Denver. So it just so happens, and again, the company likes him. He's worked hard for the company. He's established a relationship. So again, all of this can be done. I know a company here in Massachusetts, their senior roadway person, and this was before the whole COVID hit. This person's wife got a job in Chicago. They still wanted him. He worked remotely from Chicago, working on Massachusetts design. We know you can all do that, but they knew him. He was part of the company and the culture. So it just gets a little bit of, it's just that initial getting to know, trusting, and if it can happen virtually, that's fine. It's just that it's tough anyway to do it. Maybe the younger generation is used to reading people and reading them online. I'd still like to shake their hand and go out after work and have a beer with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's, absolutely a great point, Tony. So there is a question in the chat box that we are not able to get to. I'm going to go ahead and post that within ASC Collaborate. And, if hopefully our panelists can weigh in there. If not, you can send me your answer and I can post it for you. But I think that's probably the best way so everyone can still benefit from the answer to that question. For right now, I'll say, let's go ahead and get some of your closing remarks. Kaval, do you want to go ahead and take maybe 30 seconds to a minute to share your closing thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So if I were a job seeker, I look at things that can be done differently, and done differently to me is essentially standing out. As a job seeker, you want to portray yourself, or you first want to be a high performer and then portray yourself as a high performer, and take all the great advice that Hala and Tony have given in this particular session. And there's plenty of more information on the Career by Design webpage, I found really great points. So if you are a job seeker, adopt the good things and try to stand out. Don't try to be average.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great point. Hala, do you have, you want to share your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to say that this is the interview is just one part of the journey. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do in order to get an interview. So I did have shared some member voices on how I found job during COVID-19, and I hope people can benefit from it. And then how to today you learned how to land the interview, and then after the interview, how do you start the onboarding? And I just have a funny story with interviews. In my interview, I started talking, and I thought that their speakers are not working. Then I noticed that I wasn't connected to my computer audio. So make sure that you have, because it was the first time I used Zoom, I did all the pre-tests, but also make sure that have a meeting with someone else, not the interview. So you will have like call your brother, and either one will be in a room and just try to see how Zoom works or how Teams work, or what are the features that you have while you are on this platform. And if you need anything, you can do it ahead of time. And as many of you said, that it's important to know that this is like any other interview, but just with some changes. So make sure that all the good tips on how to land, what to do in the interview will work. The prepared questions and how to dress and how to interact with your interviewer. It's really important. And I hope everyone will get through this soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, I'll let you go ahead and close us out.
I got nothing. I just got to go walk the dog now.
Okay. I did put Hala's member voice in the chat box. So thank you, Hala, for writing that. But that's some of her thoughts on how she was able to get a job during COVID-19. Tony, seriously, do you have any closing remarks?
No, I tell you, everybody is hit on it. It's the same techniques, the same skills, the same things we're looking for face to face as we are looking through a camera. Yeah, it's no different. The onboarding is different, but as far as the interview goes, and we did as a company had a successful job interview with a local municipality that was a target, and we had to. I don't know if it was Teams. I think it was Teams or Zoom. I don't know, but we had to share the screen, and I had to give it to my partner, and she then did this, and he did that, and then we had questions. So practice. Hala said absolutely. Call your brother, mother, father, whatever. Say, how do I look? Am I centered? Can you see my background? You're right. Do those kind of checks. So that was something I didn't think of, but so we were successful in winning a job via interview, and I think that you'll see that more in the future, more municipalities, rather than then getting 5 people in a room and 5 people traveling from an hour away to sit down. Sometimes for some projects, they'll just do it virtually, and they still get the feel of who you are and what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, everyone. You've all shared some great insights that I've really enjoyed, and thank you, Hala and Kaval, for sharing your information in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to our panelists directly. If you have additional questions. And just as a reminder, AAC members are welcome to continue this conversation on ASCE Collaborate. And then for anyone who is not an AAC member, I'd be happy to talk with you about the benefits and resources that ASCE provides. So please feel free to contact me as well if you have any additional questions or resources in your job search. Happy to help you as well. So anyways, thank you all. I greatly appreciate your time. You've shared some great insights, and I look forward to seeing you remotely again soon.